it is a love-hate day, Lawrence.
Yes, sir.
So this is the NFL Draft Post edition of Love Hate, and just very quickly and easily, obviously, what this is players whose value has either gone up, the loves, or players whose value has gone down, the hates, after the NFL Draft. So this isn't necessarily saying like, hey, I love this person. Like, we're going to talk about Cam Ward here in a second.
Yes.
There's no question Cam Ward's fantasy value has gone up with all the moves that the Titans have made in the offseason and the NFL Draft, starting with Carnell Tate. But, like, I'm not saying he's a love, right? He's still he's still like, a low-end QB2 in a super flex or 2-quarterback league. So I just want to kind of level set what love-hate is for the post-NFL Draft edition.
All right, well, let's start off with your first quarterback, Matthew. Tyler Shough, who got some offensive help, specifically at the 8th overall spot with Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. How do you see him helping Tyler Shough go even further in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, I think people don't remember, unless you had him last year. Look, as people shucked around and found out, since week 10, nice graphics, by the way. I wonder if that's Emmy Award-winning Stupid Deb that did that graphic. Well done. I'm being told it is. He's always the best. But you see there, look, in fantasy points per game, he was 8th from week 10, averaging over 18 fantasy points per game. He got over 20 yards a game with his legs. And so I think second year in a Kellen Moore offense, coming into the offseason knowing he's the guy. They're building this offense around him. And then you think about what they did. You mentioned Jordan Tyson. They also selected 3 different pass catchers in the first 4 rounds, including tight end Oscar Delp. We like him. They signed Travis Etienne. They signed David Edwards to improve the offensive line in the offseason. Again, second year in this system. And so given the success that we saw last year, second year, and all the additional weapons, Tyson has been, you and I talked about at draft night.
Yeah.
Jordan Tyson has been comped to Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Right.
He's that kind of talent.
Right. And in this Saints offense, Matthew, that's kind of how they'll use him. They got Cris Olave as the deep threat. I think the most important thing, is that not only was Tyler Shough starting to put up the fantasy numbers, guys, but they were either winning the games or they were competitive in the games. So I think that builds confidence to year 2. Drew, how do you see them and see how this thing's shaking out, especially in a division like the NFC South?
Yeah, well, I'm a betting man, and we look for soft angles. And when you see a team go all in around a quarterback, who is on year 2, that is signal. That, to me, tells me they believe they have a chance to win now and build around Shough. This isn't like a we're not sure about him type of offseason. The additions they made that you guys highlighted, I think, specifically say we believe Shough will be good enough to win this year. And then I can only just add, Kellen Moore, he impressed me last year. I would put him in the top 10 offensive coordinators. This is a team that's going to threaten to score 30 every game. Their win total, only 7.5. That, to me, looks about 1.5 too low. I think they right now I would put them neck and neck with the Buccaneers to win the NFC South. I think they clear that 7.5, even if they don't have a healthy set of wide receivers for the full year. And, the Saints are a bye right now.
All right, we got Valiant Vincent _13. Drew looks like the public-facing persona of a guy who's secretly a Batman villain.
That's a great call, Valiant Vincent, although I will say I think he's like more of like a henchman. I don't think you're like the main villain. You're like the number 3 guy.
With the Tommy gun light.
That's exactly right. You're like the number 3 henchman. You die in the third act, but you get like a solo death. Like they focus on you.
Man, in 1989, Batman with Michael Keaton, there's a henchman that has the top hat, and he's got the hair too, just like Drew, and he walks around with he's like the Joker's main henchman in that movie.
Right. So so you're like the number 3 henchman for a villain in like an old Batman movie, not even like a current Christopher Nolan one. Like you're like, all right, but good call, Valiant Vincent. The regulars are on fire today, as always. We love it. Where are we going next, Lawrence?
Yeah, next on your love list, Jalen Hurts.
Yes,
right?
sir.
A lot of questions about A.J. Brown, where we think we know the answer to the outcome of that. But, they get Mekhi Lemon at 20th overall. They get Eli Stowers the next round after that. Where do we see this offense going? And could they potentially look better without A.J. Brown?
Yeah, this can be one of those weird things, but I do think this is going to be one of those addition by subtraction situations. It's not that A.J. Brown isn't super talented, because of course he is, right? He's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, no questions asked. But there's clearly something going on. There's clearly a relationship that has been fractured. It feels like beyond repair between Hurts and A.J. Brown, between A.J. Brown and the organization. He has he's let it known to multiple reporters he wants out, whether he's sitting on the bench reading a book or whatever. And so there's this tension. Have you ever been, Lawrence, I know you have, because you go to parties all the time. Drew, you ever been at a party or something like that where there's some awkward person and just it's kind of tense, and then the minute that person leaves and there's just a huge I thought he'd never leave kind of thing, and and now just everyone can be relaxed and have fun just because this person just wasn't fitting the vibe of the party. That's what I feel like this is, and so I think letting Devontae Smith become the number one here, adding Dontavian Wicks, adding Hollywood Brown. You mentioned the draft. You mentioned the draft picks of Mekhi Lemon and Eli Stowers as well. And then you think about Sean Mannion, who's their fourth offensive coordinator in 4 years. And what they've done the first 3 years that have gotten all these guys fired, or in some cases they've moved on, but they've just run the ball. They've been very run heavy. And so, if you're Sean Mannion and you're coming into this thing hey, should I do the things that got the last three guys out of here, or should I try to do something different? So I just think they'll open up the offense a little bit more, and that with no A.J. Brown sort of, quote, demanding targets or pouting on the sideline when he doesn't get it, I think they can distribute the balls more. I think Jalen Hurts, a fully healthy Jalen Hurts, he's my QB5 this year.
Wow.
I think he's going to be another fantasy superstar season once again.
Yeah, man. And with those offensive additions, Drew, do you feel like, the Eagles are still the class of this NFC East? Or could the Commanders make a comeback like they did Jaden Daniels' rookie year? We saw what the Cowboys did in the draft. How will this offense, keep them rolling? Yeah,
there's no easy wins in the NFC all of a sudden. The Cardinals are kind of the only team that you would qualify as a pushover. The entire NFC East looks very strong all of a sudden now that all the holes have been plugged. I liked your analogy of addition by subtraction with A.J. Brown. The addition by subtraction that warrants more careful consideration is the offensive coordinator getting replaced. His play calling was so predictable and telegraphed practically. It was clear that he was never on the same page with Jalen Hurts in terms of what he was asking him to do, when he was asking him to try to test the middle of the field. A fresh voice will almost certainly help him every time he's been tested in his career, and this is a transitioning kind of year for him. Every time he's been put to the test, he's answered, I think with authority, and this year feels like one of those years.
For sure. All right, man. Let's get to others receiving votes here. This list led by Cam Ward.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we sort of talked about it at the top of the show, but they drafted Carnell Tate 4th overall. Last year they did not have a player with more than 600 receiving yards. And so now they don't have to rely on the ghost of Calvin Ridley or, a couple of late-round rookies. They've got Carnell Tate. They add Wan'Dale Robinson in the offseason. Brian Daboll is calling the plays, right? Somebody that developed Josh Allen and Jackson Dart. So I think things are looking up for Cam Ward. How about Geno Smith? Not saying he's amazing, but he's now on the mid-tier QB2 radar after the Jets draft Kenyon Sadiq and Omar Cooper, and the Jets offensive line certainly much better than what the Raiders had last season. Ty Simpson, certainly fantasy value much higher after the draft, at least in terms of dynasty leagues, when you think about going to Sean McVay and that Rams, and he's going to ultimately get to learn behind Matthew Stafford. We know he's going to be the future starter given the fact they used the 13th overall pick. And then Carson Beck, who I will tell you, I was in a dynasty draft, Drew, where we drafted rookies before the NFL draft. Super deep, 12-team league, 33-man roster, super flex. Carson Beck did not get drafted.
Whoa. Wow.
Because just people are like, he's going to be a backup somewhere. Wow. But now he goes to Arizona where he's surrounded by a ton of talent, and he's got journeyman Jacoby Brissett in front of him. I think there's a non-zero chance we see Carson Beck under center this year with Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride, and Michael Wilson with Jeremiah Love in the backfield. All of a sudden, Carson Beck, just by circumstances, and you think about, new offense coordinator, new play caller in LaFleur there.
It could
Carson
be.
Beck is sort of semi-interesting now.
And it'll depend on how, their season goes. Yeah. Drew, was there anybody out of those four guys who stuck out to you?
Well, surely the most interesting name on the list from what is going to happen is Geno Smith. The Jets had an amazing draft. He now has weapons and protection. it's a much, much better situation than he was in last year in Las Vegas. If he ends up being, capable quarterback, they're clearly going to draft a quarterback at the top of next year's draft. So do they ultimately give him the hook if they are winning too much? Like, that's kind of what my head's, where my head is at with the Jets, because otherwise that's a team now that's invested pretty heavily on the defense in terms of free agency, and it's invested heavily on the offense in terms of young capital. So, yeah, kind of curious if Geno Smith gets more than, a few starts.
For the Jets overall, again, because you think about you're adding all these players to Garrett Wilson, to Breece Hall, to Mason Taylor, who's now like their 6th or 7th. I'm interested to see what Adonai Mitchell now does in a full season as well. Like, there's suddenly, like, I'm not saying that Jay had this line, he's right, which is, I'm not saying they're good, but they're good adjacent.
Yeah.
And, they're within shouting distance of good. And if Geno Smith can just be competent, if Geno Smith can be like the 16th best quarterback in the NFL, like a top 20-ish guy, if he can be Seattle Geno, the Jets are suddenly interesting.
That said,
we'd be starting Garrett Wilson every week if Geno's that.
And it would be very Jets to accidentally win 7 or 8 games and miss the chance to draft a generational quarterback next year because Geno's too good.
That's Jets football. We was getting into the hate list, Matthew.
It's Thurby, by the way, at the Derby. It is Thurby. Get it? Thursday.
Thurby.
It is Thurby. It is Thurby.
Yeah,
welcome
we gotta
to
get that
Thurby
in there.
At the Derby.
And we was just going over your hate list for quarterbacks, Matthew. Malik Willis, and as you can see, the receiving room that he has here, which is a pretty big reason why he's on this list.
I mean, listen, I have Malik Washington in Dynasty. I'm a Malik Washington truther. I feel like I might be wrong on that one. Then you're right. So then you sit here, look at Tutu Atwell, Jalen Tolbert, guys that, kind of were just like sort of spot guys for the teams that they have. They draft Caleb Douglas, widely considered a massive reach in the 3rd round. They get Chris Bell, who's coming up. We like Chris Bell, but we talked about this draft night, Lawrence. He's coming off that torn ACL, might not be ready for the start of the season. The only wide receiver in the Dolphins receiving room that caught more than 20 passes last year is Malik Washington. And again, I think Malik Washington, he's really fast, and I think he's a nice prospect, but he's not at least right now, he's not a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. And so you think about that room. And so, look, Malik Willis still might be usable for fantasy just because he's going to run so much. But certainly you are hoping that the Dolphins put more around their big free agency acquisition in Malik Willis, and they just didn't. So that's why, unfortunately, he makes the hate list. His value is lower than what it was pre-NFL draft. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.